Ambedkar was a double degree in economics, double PhD.
So isn't Ambedkar, being a man of black and white, isn't that the reason why he basically failed? Because the fact that there is a rape of a Dalit woman every few hours and that the word Dalit is still being used, that means Ambedkar failed, whereas Gandhi achieved his success 70 years ago.
Okay, that's a very interesting question, but I quoted Ambedkar in between, and I think we have to make a distinction between what I exactly mean as black and white and gray. By black and white, I do not mean the binary black and white, so of the kind that you've just mentioned. And if you remember, Ambedkar also said that when he was saying that even Plato is wrong, and he says that, look, the diversity as the human society progresses, the diversity and the sheer progression of human society has led us from 4 varnas to 4,000 castes. So Ambedkar himself recognizes that you cannot stratify or pigeonhole humans into 4 categories. So when I say black and white, I do not mean he is a reductionist. I mean in the sense that you do not wipe away the sins of people just because they have done some good job. You do not start admiring Hitler just because he built autobahns, or Tipu Sultan just because he gave some money to a mutt so that it could be rebuilt, and wipe away all the tragedies that he did, or so many others that I mentioned.
But asking us to not find the good inside Hitler or maybe any other evil dictator. But the reality is that we do. He is asking us.
That is what I said. No?
Reality. The fact is, because Gandhi embraced the idea that we do find white and black and white, and that he didn't create a strict boundary between.
दारू पीता हूँ, सिगरेट पीता हूँ, बीड़ी पीता हूँ, गांजा पीता हूँ, अफीम, चरस भी पीता हूँ.
Asking that, and I have only one sentence to answer that. You're absolutely right. And because you are right, this world has only 0.1% atheists and 99.9% religious people. But that doesn't mean that the atheists are wrong. What that means is that atheists have accepted that the world is religious, right? But that doesn't deny the atheists from following rationale or logic as they see fit.
Or as Molak would have said, they get the heroes we deserve.
Yes. Very true. I mean, if you saw the passage that I quoted Gandhi in, where he's talking of castes coming to politics, what do we see now? We see exactly the reflection of what Mahatma Gandhi had written on castes. Exactly. And total opposite of what Ambedkar had talked about. So yes, we deserve Gandhi.
When I was taking JEE coaching, we used to joke that you can get into IIT if you have done all the questions of HCF, mass concept of physics, have read your NCERT chemistry book properly, and you are great in calculus. And if you aren't able to do this, then also you can reach into IIT just if you are lucky enough to be blessed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So I think you understand what I mean.
I do understand what you mean, and that is why, so there are 2 things here. I talked in the middle about catharsis, that we have to face the wave, and the last person I would expect to take credit when he did not deserve it is Ambedkar. We know, right, throughout his life. Why did Ambedkar talk of reservations? First of all, I mean, there are conflicting notions of that he wanted it for 10 years or 30 years, but he wanted it for a limited period of time. If you were to see the kind of, as we talked about, the discrimination that was prevalent, and even before the Constitution was written, so of course, you have the Untouchability Act and things of that sort, they came in later in the 50s. You can see that there was this angst in this man to show to Indians that look, we need to stand up and face the wave.
Well done.
And just how unsuccessful we have been in doing that is so evident even today, right? So I am for reservations. In fact, I haven't mentioned this on Twitter because obviously for the next 1 month I would be trolled. But I am not only for reservations, I am for reservations in the private sector as well. Okay, so you can go back and troll me, but let me give you the reason.
On the basis of caste, sir.
Sorry?
On the basis of caste.
On the basis of yes. Right. Now, let me give you the reason. Why do we have reservations? What is the principle of giving reservation? It is that as a nation, it is not that, the few political class are charitable. Of course, now the reason for giving reservations is totally non-philosophical. It is more to do with, grabbing vote bank. But I'm talking of a philosophical issue. Why should a nation give reservations? It is because we have accepted that it is the fastest way of emancipation. It is not a permanent way, as Dr. Ambedkar also mentioned, it is not a permanent way. But if we believe collectively that yes, it is a fastest way of emancipation of 20% of our population that for 2000 years has been discriminated against, if we believe that, then we give reservations.
Well done.
Now, why do I say that if we believe that founding principle philosophically, right, then why should we have reservations only in the government sector?
You're right, bro.
65% of the manufacturing GDP comes from the private sector. If we want to emancipate this 20% of the population, give them the arms, not just to fish, but to teach them how to fish, so that, and you won't believe me, I know from my own family, from both my parents' side, that you need only one person in your family to study and come up, and the whole family is, the tree is certain. I know that for a fact. So the whole point is, if we believe that reservations philosophically are the fastest way of emancipation, that is, it is doing the nation good, why not try reservations in the private sector? That is my belief.
So practically it hasn't done anything.
I beg your pardon?
So practically it hasn't done anything good. It has just been merit.
No, I don't believe so at all.
This requires another lecture.
This requires another lecture and another
Just one single line. Sir, if
people have exploited reservation. I mean, it's not that there are problems in it, but you cannot say it hasn't done anything. That would be wrong.
the cutoffs in JEE mains for a general category student, you have cutoff about 120.
Okay, this is veering into, but
For an SC, ST, you have cutoff 32. You can see the gap. So, if he is not good enough to score 125, so he doesn't deserve to be.
so you are against reservations.
अब तो सच बोल दे भोसड़ी के
I'm against reservation. I'm for economic condition based reservation. The one who is poor or the one who is marginalized, they should get reservation, not only on the basis of caste.
There is certainly a case of reservations based on economic condition, no doubt about it. But can you refute the fact that the scheduled castes in this country for the last 2000 years, irrespective of their economic strata, have been discriminated against, and that's the worst kind of discrimination? Did you, when I mentioned about the 9-year-old Ambedkar wearing a Western suit?
But sir, things have changed.
No,
Sir, are you saying that I have inherited the responsibility of the crimes that were committed against ASC or SC?
no. Okay, now this is a very interesting question.
So you're basically saying that
No.
my forefathers committed the mistake.
Look.
I have inherited the responsibility.
Okay, if you add to that, because I want to, that's an important question.
One by one. Okay.
We take it outside, we have only 5-7 minutes before we go out.
But that's an important question. I want to answer that.
So basically you're saying that I have inherited their mistake.
Right. So tell me in your heart of hearts, as a human being who is generally kind to people, who is sympathetic, who has sympathy, empathy. These are the traits that have allowed human evolution to progress, by the way, instead of, as opposed to social Darwinism. Would you want the Britishers to apologize for the crimes they committed against India? Just say yes or no. You wouldn't? I don't know of anyone, apart from one person here now, who would say no. And I respect your view, because what you're trying to say is that why should I be guilty of the crimes that my forefathers committed? Now, right, what I'm, sorry?
They might not have committed.
No, they did. They did.
My grandfather may not have done it.
Now, look, so in fact, I have written about this. And if I can just add one sentence on this, the human progress that you saw in the 17th century and the 18th century, the Industrial Revolution, okay, you probably did not have James Watt being a racist, okay, or Christopher Wren whipping an Indian, right, or killing an Indian, but their progress was not on shoulders of giants so that they could see further. Their progress was on enslaving the millions and millions of people all around the world, taking their wealth to the country so that they could be in their labs and have the requisite amount of time and effort and money to make their empire prosper. How do empires prosper? Not because Newton was not a racist, did not commit anything. He did not even come to India, for all I know, right? But he was given the wealth, he was given, and I'm just taking one example, need not be Newton. The scientific thrust that goes into making an empire, an all-powerful empire, and we know that, right? We know that from not only the empires, let's talk of America of the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. It is ultimately science, and the science in war specifically, that powers empires, allows them to subjugate other nations. So when you subjugate millions of people, when they are forced to worry about their next meal rather than worry about what is the wavelength of light, or what is the Snell's law, or what is this, it's not that they have committed atrocities, but it is that the white great grandfathers were not immune to this. They were silent. They were silent beneficiaries. And that is the reason why I don't want a Britisher to say, oh my God, I don't want him to feel guilty about what he did. But I want him to understand this catharsis has to come, because that catharsis is what will allow that Britisher to never repeat the mistakes of his forefathers. And that has not happened. You know why? Because in 2000 they commissioned a poll as to who was the greatest Briton of all time. And you know who won? Yes. And you know his crimes? So this is what happens when you talk selectively about people, when you don't expose the crimes of your great-great-great-grand. I'm not saying that Theresa May has to apologize for what Churchill did, but I'm saying this has to be imbibed in them. Why is it a suffering? It is a catharsis. It is proud to be ashamed.
We have just
one point that for around 1000 years India has been under various attacks by Khilji onwards, around 600 years. Khilji, Tughlaq, Babur, Akbar, all these people.
Abhi bhi ho raha
And they targeted
media attack.
They targeted the Brahmins, the temples of the Brahmins. They destroyed specifically. They went to even remote places and destroyed the temples
Yes.
of the Brahmins. For around 600 years this happened. So hasn't that been sort of the reverse reservation sort of thing, wherein the Dalits could have converted, become rulers, they could have, for around 600 years, they could have been ruling. Why did not the Dalits do that? There was an opportunity to come out to be the rulers. For around 600 years, we had that reservation, followed by the British. During this time, a person could become Christian and acquire land. We gave away huge tracts of land to church and.
That's an interesting question, and I think one would have to go into the detail of what exactly the social strata of the four Varnas was. My opinion is that even though the temples were destroyed, psychologically and financially, the two highest stratas remained as Brahmins and Kshatriyas. So,
Really targeted. There are reports by the Muslim conquerors for hundreds of years, generations after generations, they were targeted and decimated. And there was every opportunity for the underprivileged.
भैया जी हम लोग सब आपके साथ में ही
I don't know what you mean by opportunity. Because the
I'm not sure.
I think he also said why Dalits remain in
So
Hindu,
what's the point?
why then not converted?
But I would after this, because there was a pretty incendiary tweet tweeted yesterday by saying that would the lecture change the audience's opinion or would the audience change Anand's opinion? So after this question, so I would dearly like a show of hands after this question as to how many of you believe the real father of the nation is Ambedkar.
So my question is pretty much on the topic. I read a comment from Ambedkar himself in a source which you would not appreciate, India after Gandhi by Yuva. But it's a very relevant quote because it talks about how Ambedkar was against any kind of hero worship. And that's a true quote.
Yes.
So that's what we have found as well. Whenever we have looked at our heroes too closely, we have find faults. And in the light of like the first question, we do learn from the people who are not so great as well.
And also, if you remember, when I quoted a passage of Ambedkar on journalism, I don't know whether you got it. He was actually hinting at Gandhi when he's talking of journalism today is nothing else but drum boys of beating of anointing a hero. He's actually talking of Gandhi.
So first of all, Gandhi supported Ambedkar for the thing that is very widely known, that is the architect of our constitution. So actually, it was Gandhi who insisted that he was actually chosen by Nehru's cabinet for law minister. So that shows that that enmity that we just talked about.
No, that's not entirely
so let
true.
me just well done.
Oh, sorry, please.
There are a couple of other things. One thing is Ambedkar demanded separate electorate for Dalits, which is on the same line what Jinnah demanded. It was only Gandhi's success against Ambedkar which probably saved us. That's my reading, that saved us from not having another country. Sudhindra Kulkarni in a recent article.
ऊपर वाला wrong हो सकता है, लेकिन dong कभी wrong नहीं होता.
Here we go again. Next you're gonna quote Michelangelo.
Let me know if this is wrong, but he quotes that Ambedkar was also of the opinion that scheduled tribe were not ready for the kind of reservation that we talked for scheduled caste when the whole thing was being discussed at that time.
Okay.
So if it is inaccurate, yeah, we can just sit away.
Okay, how many questions?
Just two more things is there. So
Okay.
one, socialist.
Because I'm forgetting the first question and that was important question.
First one was Gandhi backing up for
the cabinet, yeah.
for,
Okay.
Constitution.
Right.
And
Can I answer that?
so just two more things.
Okay.
So one more thing that you talked about is 295A.
Yes.
And freedom of speech.
Yes.
So Ambedkar was very much in the cabinet. He was part of the team that was writing constitution. I would love to know what he did about getting rid of these. He was actually part of the cabinet which actually passed the First Amendment, curtailing curtailing the freedom right.
Yes. Okay. So the first question was about Nehru being asked by Gandhi, or Gandhi asking Nehru to include Ambedkar in drafting the constitution. Now you remember that Ambedkar was a double degree in economics, double PhD, and remarkable acumen as far as law was concerned. So, and if you look at Ambedkar's own personal readings and remarks, you would understand how disappointed he was at being given the law ministry. He wanted economic ministry because I'm quoting Ambedkar's words. So he was acutely disappointed. He even expressed his displeasure in, more than once to Mr. Nehru, that he wanted the economic ministry, because he felt that using that he would be able to, his sole aim was to attain fastest emancipation of the depressed classes. Okay, so my hunch is that, the truth is that he preferred Ministry of Finance, but he was given law. And of course, he was a remarkable, one of the greatest luminaries that we have seen in the field of law. So even if they had not included Ambedkar in the team that was drafting the constitution, that team would itself have had to go back to, Abhinav can answer that so much better than I can, he's in the audience, time and time again, to seek Ambedkar's advice. But it is, am I correct? He actually wanted Ministry of Finance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
295
Okay. Now Ambedkar actually wrote a pre-preamble. Not many people know this. He charted it out, and so lest you believe that I am a bhakt of Ambedkar, nothing of that sort. I just feel he is an incredibly gifted guy, who one should follow all this thing. But I also disagree with him. And I was talking to a gentleman, I told him I have 2.5 disagreements with Ambedkar. And the half of that is that in that pre-preamble, he said that all citizens of India would have complete freedom of expression unless it is a hindrance to public convenience. Okay? So that I feel is wrong. But the amendment is a different matter altogether, because Nehru brought in 4 different clauses, or you can call them as your 19(2)(a). So while initially when the constitution was drawn, it was exactly how Ambedkar had envisaged, and I disagree with that part of, that he added unless. According to me, that was wrong. But the first amendment did much more damage than what Ambedkar had envisaged.
Hi. Pretty exhausting.
I know, but I kept exactly 2.5 hours.
So the question is, Thomas Sowell, one of the tallest black American thinkers.
Yes.
He was once asked, what should the government do to decrease discrimination in the society?
Yeah.
And he answered that nothing. He said that governments and monopolies discriminate, because they have the greatest incentive or the least disincentive to discriminate. On the other hand, market and commercial organizations, they have the greatest disincentive to discriminate. If there is an organization who starts discrimination on the basis of race or anything, in their recruitments, they will lose talent. If they start discriminating in clients, they lose money. And it is not a guarantee against discrimination, but it is the fastest way to decrease discrimination. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think that can work practically, because if there is a hint of corruption, we have an amazing nose of sniffing it. So and let me also say that the kind that you are saying, I love that gentleman, of course, and I am a proponent of the smallest state as possible. Government has no business doing business, should not be involved in this, and should be a capitalist free market state, except that some of the demands that some of the laws and the freedoms that Dr. King obtained from the government would not have been possible if had the government not intervened. It's as simple as that. America is a great case. You have those laws that would have carried on for so long. Even now you see so much racism. So just imagine had Johnson, not acceded to, or before him Kennedy tried to, that changed. The civil liberties that were obtained by Dr. King actually changed America in a major way. So it's wrong to say that government should not play any role. Government should have a lot of role. Otherwise, why do we need a government?
I don't know if that...
If you leave it to, and the other point that you raised, that if you leave it to the market forces, I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if someone's done a study on that, But as far as reducing discrimination is concerned, I would say that if you do not, there is a difference between capitalism and crony capitalism, right? I support capitalism. I abhor crony capitalism. And people have shown that the more lax your regulations are for capitalism, the more you venture into the territories of crony capitalism. So what you would find is that any company would totally go towards regressive means or exploitation or whatever you may call it, unless there are rules and regulations. I feel that's important.
The other question, how many of you have thrown away the idea that Gandhi is the real father?
Right.
You should rather be the stepfather of